It's even worse than that. It's one step worse than that. That in the 1992 United States Defense Department Policy Planning Guidance document that I told you about, that they drafted up, starting on the Monday morning after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, what they did is they put this document together, and they said that the reason that we don't want to step back and reduce our military budget just because the Soviet Union has been disbanded now and that we've been rationalizing the $700 billion a year on the grounds that we had to protect ourselves against them. The reason that we want to increase the military budget because now we have the chance to establish full spectrum dominance over the planet. And the purpose of this will be to maintain, quote, to maintain our continued privileged access to the strategic raw materials needed by our major corporations. Okay? Because that's what they do. And they view that as they are Rome. They are the aggressor.
Right.
You asked me what my idea about the national security is. They are the aggressors on the planet. Okay, and what they're doing is they're working at the behest of the major corporations and the wealthiest families that own the shares of stock. It's just as bad as you think it is. They view their job as securing their continued privileged access to the strategic raw materials. I've sat and had direct conversations with the people that'll tell you that if there's some third world country that is sitting on some sort of major resource that turns out to be of real value economically or militarily for us, if we don't go get it first, China or Russia will go get it. So we'll go get it first. Right. And that's aggressive war. That is a violation of every single premise of a just war theory. Right. You are the aggressor. You are the bad guy. I had the experience when I got ready to leave to go to college. I grew up with my aunt and uncle, and my uncle was the head of the Republican County Committee up in Warren County, up in northern New York, right? And I'm getting set to leave to go down to Boston to go to college. He brings me out. He's the head of he's the civil defense director for the whole county, and he goes out and we stand in our front yard. And from our front yard, you look north into Canada, and for 100 miles, all there are is forest, the Adirondack Forest Preserve, right? And Uncle Jim says to me, Danny, he says, you're going down to college now. I don't want you to become a communist. Going down there. He said, I want you to look out here now. There's going to be a day will come when the Russians are parachuting into our hometown. And I want you to commit to me right now that when the Russians parachute into our town, that you will fight against them. And I said, look, Jim, Jim, the Russians aren't going to be parachuting into our hometown. I said, but I'll tell you what I will do. I will take an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Right.
And then I left, okay? I go back down to go to college, right? I'm in, before I get to Harvard College, I'm in Special Forces, right, for 2 years, right, in the 5th Special Forces. And I'm out at Fort Devens. We're getting set to do the Halo jump, the high altitude. Yeah. We're getting set to do the Halo jump. And they bring the Spec 4 from 5th Army Special Forces. And he's sitting there telling us, look, okay, now you gotta remember now, when you jump into the night, you're up at like 38,000 feet, you jump out, you time your drop. And he said, when you drop in, he said, you got to make sure anybody who sees you come in, you got to kill them immediately and bury them with your chute. Because they were trained to drop in behind the lines in Vietnam, right? And he said, and I said to him, I'm standing there with our unit, and I say, well, wait a second, what if it's women or children? Kill them, he said, and bury them with your chute. We're the fucking Russians, I said. That's exactly what Uncle Jim was hypothesizing, of them jumping into our fucking neighborhood, right? And here we are going 8,000 miles away, jumping into the neighborhood of people that have been there for 5,000 years. And we're jumping into their neighborhood, and I'm sitting here being told at Fort Devens, in Special Forces, that you jump in and you kill the women and children if you have to, and bury them with your chute. And I turned around right then, and I walked right out of the place. Turned around, walked away, and Captain Campbell, our commander, said, Sheehan, where the fuck do you think you're going? I turned around, I said, don't look at somebody around here is fucking nuts, I said, and it ain't me. And I turned around and walked out and never went back. They freaked out and drafted me and all that shit. And I ended up going to Harvard College. Fuck ask you, I said. I go to Harvard College, and I studied American foreign policy under Henry Kissinger. I studied all about the Vietnam War. I got to be one of the point briefers from Harvard Law School to the United States Senate, briefing them on the Cooper-Church Amendment as to how they could constitutionally cut off all the funds for the Vietnam War, right? And I ended up being the lawyer for the Pentagon Papers case to reveal all of this so we could stop the fucking war, right? And so I took this personally. This is a violation of everything that we've been taught. What these people are doing is a violation of everything that we've been taught. They are the bad guys. They are the bad guys. And there are decent guys that go into the military because, they need a job or they need training stuff.
Right.
And they get tasked to do all this stuff. And by the time they get buried into this military culture, all they're doing is blindly doing whatever it is they're told. And they invade places and kill people, and then they end up justifying killing somebody because they killed my buddy, and here you are 8,000 miles away. What are we doing invading the Middle Eastern oil fields? It's just completely obvious. We invaded the Middle Eastern oil fields based on a complete, absolute fabricated lie that Saddam Hussein was in possession of nuclear weapons, and we go ho-hum. Oh, well, okay, I guess that was a big fat lie. We've been in and killed tens of thousands of people, spent hundreds and hundreds of lives of American men and women, for what? To occupy the Middle Eastern oil fields. Why? So that we could control the Middle Eastern oil for our country and keep China from getting it. Okay?
Right.
So, that's what's happening here. So that's the answer to your question. What do you think about all this national security state?
Right.
I think the national security state is fascist. I think that they are devoted to the proposition that the entire instrumentalities of the state should be put at the disposal of the private interests of corporations, and that is fascism. That's exactly what Mussolini wrote his major essay about on fascism. That is exactly what the idea of fascism is. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's what they're doing. And they're justifying aggressive wars, to go get the resources because somebody else will do it. And they keep on buffaloing everybody that the Soviet Union was planning on taking over the world. That's our job. As George Carlin used to say, that's our job, and that's what they're doing. They're attempting to establish full spectrum dominance over the planet through 800 military bases, through over $1 trillion a year now, $1 trillion a year in major military operations, with young men and women of complete good faith that are Americans that have been raised believing in the fundamental rights of the Constitution and liberty and democracy and all that stuff, and they're being deployed to go kill people, over oil. That is so that Donald Trump and the guys can say, we are the number one producers of energy now in the world. We are producing more oil than Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And they're our allies, Saudi Arabia, so it's, that's what I think, and that's why I went to the Jesuits to be legal counsel for them, because they're the ones that are devoted to trying to instill the fundamental Judeo-Christian social ethics that we've all been taught as young men and women, in our high school civics courses and everything else. Our job is to make that stuff real, and you can hold them up to it. You can confront them with it, to say, look, here's the promises that we've been made. Here's the promises we've been made all through our being raised in high school and college and everything else, and we intend to do that. And, and that's why we're still alive, is because the guys say, wait a second, these kids actually believe this stuff. That's who we are.